Guess who read some comic books? Me, that's who. So we'll begin with the final issue, unfortunately, for Jay Garrick, The Flash. And it's been really good. It's better than the JSA title. The only competitor out of that group would be the Sandman comic, which I like very much. This one is just very basic and simple, similar to the praise I give to World's Finest and stuff like that. And it's of course, it's a touching story. The weird way in which he rediscovered his daughter, who was taken out of time, and he forgot about her. Look, it's all time travel magic stuff or whatever. But anyway, she's in trouble. Daddy's got to save the day. And yes, Daddy saves the day. Imagine that. Yeah. So the art's good. The story's good. It's just really good. And the only bad part is it's over. They probably should just scrap everything, and at this point, even just make Jay Garrick the main Flash again, and go from here. But it was a good run, and far superior of the regular Justice Society series, because it just can't seem to really get started. It's too busy explaining itself over and over again. Meanwhile, in Green Lantern War Journal, things are underway for John Stewart. It's all very strange. It's multiversal stuff, and I would have thought it would coincide with what's going on with the rest of the Corps and Hal Jordan's title. And I suppose it'll get there at some point, but he's off on his own thing here. And but it's good. The art's good. This guy from another universe, he runs into Guy Gardner and Guy Gardner's place. It's a good little run in there. And so on and so forth. And then the battle continues with the undead invaders that John Stewart has to face. And he's trapped on this world, and there's a good adventure there. Meanwhile, back at home, the babysitter that he created, on the one hand, is protecting his mother, but on the other hand, I'm beginning to wonder by the time he gets back if the made-up construct is going to take on a sentience and won't give up its job of babysitting his mom. Don't know if that's where it's going, but whatever, it's doing its job against threats to John's mother as he is fighting off this bizarre invasion. So far so good. It's pretty steady. And so that's 2 Green Lantern titles that are pretty strong. Meanwhile, over at Superman, House of Brainiac 2, continuing on from Action Comics. And, it had a little silly opening and whatnot about Lois having a day off and all that type of stuff. But then it really gets into the action. And as a crossover event, albeit within Superman titles for the most part, there's some crossover with the Green Lantern titles and Guy Gardner and all that with Lobo. But here, it really picks up the pace, and it's an interesting pairing with Lobo here. Which you knew he was going to have to come into this because of suddenly there's all these Zarnians showing up helping out Brainiac. And of course, the big reveal was that their city or whatever was taken by Brainiac and shrunk down. So they survived being wiped out, apparently by Lobo himself. So he would be the only one. But the main thing about it here, with Main Man, get it, is what the attitude Superman has at the moment with his family in danger and stuff, and he's doesn't have much patience with any idiocy and whatnot, and has a more determined approach and is very angry. And Lobo is just like really happy about this because he doesn't like nice guy Superman. He likes it when Superman's mad and just knocking villains around and stuff like that. So it's an interesting pairing in that and of itself. So once again, so far so good for this House of Brainiac story. This will lead into the Absolute Power story, which leads into Absolute Comics and all that sort of stuff. We'll see how that plays out. But so far, just in and of itself for this Brainiac story, so far, so good. Meanwhile, over at Marvel, in their Ultimate line with Ultimate Black Panther, of the three that have come about, more happens adventure-wise in Black Panther than does Spider-Man or the X-Men. The X-Men is just a bizarre take on it with whatever this little girl's going through, and it's more of like a ghost story in that. So it's interesting and whatnot. I don't think it'll go over well for your average X-Men fan, but we'll see. Spider-Man is just about his family, which is interesting and everything, but it's not much Spider-Man to it. Whereas Black Panther, it's basically a Black Panther story, just, in another universe and what have you. So, his wife and sister get in a fight. Meow, meow. And, that's that. That's pretty much all the review pages, from Comic Book Roundup, where I get these images, from have available. But it delves more into a further story, and if you thought there would be a Killmonger fight between him and Storm and all that, no, not yet anyway, but there's a greater truth. So this is more of an issue that does expand more on the world as it is in this version of the Ultimate Universe. And that sort of thing. So kind of slows down, whereas earlier there's a bit more happening to it. So it's at a better pace of the other two. But where it goes, we'll have to wait and see. But all right, we'll see. I just don't really have a conclusive statement on it just yet. The art is really good, so we'll see how that plays out. So finally, still the best. It's World's Finest, despite who writes it, which has all kinds of problems. What are you going to do? And the templates of this should be applied to superhero comics overall. I think that could certainly be said of the Jay Garrick Flash series, and so on and so forth. Here, yeah, it's silly enough because you got Batmite, and I still call him Mitzelplick. I don't care. In it. And, I would have thought they could have done a storyline where it's revealed that they've just been messing around and this is a separate universe all on its own, and you just forget about the DC continuity, and this becomes the beginning of Absolute Comics. That's not going to happen. Some of the story details about Batman have leaked. It's going to be very, very different, and I think it's a bad idea, but whatever, what have you. But still, of course, the art is fantastic. And this was a story set up in their, in the annual of this. And, some great evil, is afoot. And the imps have sought out Batman and Superman for help. And so, we'll see where it goes. But the godlike powers of the imps, they could be the entities that reboot a universe. It would be that simple. But the way this is set up and everything, even though this is not a separate universe, it's already been a story that created a backstory for an in-continuity story. So this is the past for current DC. But still, I would just follow the templates here, Mark Waid notwithstanding, and extrapolate that to the DC Comics line. But who are we kidding? It's not going to happen. It's unfortunate. But anyway, it's the same old thing. It's good. It's fun. It's the best they got. So there you go. That's what I read. One more thing. I received my copy of John Maylin's Godlike, Volume 1, the Romulus Saga, I believe is the full title. I believe, see? The Romulus Saga. So, I have to admit I was somewhat disappointed, and that his Graveyard Shift was probably better. In that it was more of an action story. Hey, what are you talking about? Look at all this action. Well, this is a still shot from it. And that's about as far as it goes. His artwork's all throughout it, but basically the book is a massive prologue to some other story that'll come later. And it gives a lot of explanation for it. And there's a revelation about who the main hero is and all that sort of stuff. And but for the most part, it tells you stuff that has happened and indicates things that are happening, never really depicts it. Not quite. And it's like, well, tune in next time. And, well, I think there should have been a little more to that. And it goes on and on and on of detailing backstory and building of the world that this story takes place in and all that. But I don't think it was necessary to have it be that long-winded. And I mean, there's where pages, there's just solid black pages where this big reveal thing, and okay, but there was an awful lot preceding that that's just slow going into a story that never really starts. I mean, it basically is a prologue to a part two. Well, a part two would be the next step to a story, but the first story would be a first story, whereas there is an opening in this story, and that's if you could confine it to mostly that, and then have some sort of workable narrative and combined with action and whatnot that plays out, would have been more satisfying. But it isn't quite there. And a lot of it came across as being rather flat, if you will, and an awful lot of silhouette imagery and that sort of thing. Not quite like this, but this is one where, well, hopefully the next one's a little better. But it was a bit of a letdown. So we'll see how it plays out. But that's unfortunate. Because like with the graveyard shift, there was more action to that story. There was a lot of backstory and stuff like that to it. But it was these classic type horror characters combined with the X-Men and that sort of thing. And it was an interesting take on it. But just for good fun action or what have you, it played out well. The other volumes, and he switched up the art team and all that sort of thing. Some of the art was always solid to a degree, but didn't translate as well sequentially in some areas. And even here, there's this sort of ritualistic scene that plays out and doesn't quite depict exactly what's happened. It tells you what has happened, and it jumps from very small shots to very close up shots and stuff like that. I'm like, well, I mean, I understood what happens, but when it's more dependent on what's said than what's shown, at least for me anyway, it's a bit disappointing. So I don't know. Other people might be quite taken with it. There's some interesting designs and that sort of thing. But overall, I mean, it's not like oh my God, I feel like I was completely screwed and ripped off. Yeah, I wouldn't go to that point. But at best, it just leaves me thinking, gee, I hope the next one is better and makes it pay off overall, which could be the case. So that's where I am with Godlike. So anyway, there you go. John Maylin's Godlike, book 1. So there you go. Some comic books I read for today, Wednesday. Yeah. And I'm probably going to read some more. And when I do, well, I'll talk about it here on Mr. Nailsin's Wednesday Comic.